All right, this is the start of our second unit. Well, it's really the first unit in Science 30, but we're going to do that as our second unit. And this is on biology. This first chapter is on circulation and immunity. So it's talking all about the circulatory system in our bodies. So it says a comparison between the city versus a body. It says the human body is made up of trillions of cells closely packed together. These cells are similar to the closely packed houses that make up a city. Each house's inhabitants generate waste that must be regularly removed, and each house requires a constant supply of water and energy, natural gas or electricity. The houses are often far from the source of the needed supply or the waste disposal site. Like houses, cells generate waste and require constant supplies. An efficient network for transporting materials is required to keep both cells and houses functioning properly. Blood vessels in the human body function very much like highways, roads, and pipes that serve cities and towns. Notice that no home in the photo is far from a road. In your body, no cell is more than 2 or 3 cells away from a blood vessel. Like roadways, there are one-way blood vessels, major and minor blood highways, and even the occasional traffic jam as blood vessels break or clog. All right? So that's just a analogy sort of, or a comparison of our body versus a town. So we always have some sort of waste and energy that we need to always be taking in and out, and that is going to be done by the blood vessels. So our very first topic in this section is about the heart. So it says the circulatory system is the large organisms have an internal transportation or transport system known as the circulatory or the cardiovascular system. If we break the word apart, cardio refers to heart and vascular refers to blood vessels in our body. The main role of the circulatory system is to transport the transportation and delivery of oxygen, O2, and nutrients and removal of CO2, carbon dioxide, and waste from these cells' body cells. So in case you don't know, that's carbon dioxide, but we did do the chemistry unit first. But that is our carbon dioxide, and then this is just oxygen. Hopefully we remember that. Okay, so that's the main role of our circulatory system, or one of them. There's a couple of them that we're going to go through, but one of the main things is bringing in oxygen and taking away carbon dioxide. Okay. The second main role is to transport and deliver chemical messengers like hormones throughout the body. Okay, so this could be hormones, like it says. If we think of some hormones that are inside of our body, everyone thinks of the common sex-linked ones, the testosterone, and then estrogen for a woman. But we can also think about insulin when we're talking about blood sugar regulation. But also, other than hormones in our body, they could be carrying possible drugs. So maybe you take an Advil and you can see that in your blood. You could also have alcohol in your blood, where they could test your blood levels. So that's going to be transporting through your body inside your blood. Okay? And then the third role here is to distribute body heat. So we are warm-blooded organisms, and our blood moving helps us stay warm. What keeps us warm is our metabolism, that chemical breakdown of things inside of our blood, and our circulation of our blood is keeping us warm. So I'm going to say warm-blooded because we are. So getting circulation is going to keep you warm. So if you're feeling cold, get your blood moving, run around a bit. It's going to be moving faster. That's going to create more body heat. The fourth one is defense against disease. So in our body, we have different things inside our blood that defend against disease. And we're going to talk about some of those as we move on in this chapter. But this first one, we're just sort of skimming over it. But the things that it defends against disease, we have something called white blood cells. And maybe you've seen this in Osmosis Jones is the classic movie, but white blood cells, they fight off intruders. So if there's some sort of virus or bacteria that comes into your body, your white blood cells are going to replicate, and they're going to serve as sort of like an army to fight off any sort of diseases that are coming in. That's why when you get sick, you eventually hopefully start to get better because your white blood cells are killing off that intruder, the enemy, or whatever it's come into your body. All right, so those are our four main roles of the circulatory system, and these are important to remember. First one brings in oxygen and removes CO2. Second one, it moves around our hormones, the chemical messengers in our body. The third one, it distributes our body heat, so it keeps us warm. And the last one is that it defends against diseases or any sort of intruders that come into our body. Okay. Some crazy ideas about the heart. Well, ancient Egyptians believed a person's emotions, wisdom, and personality was in the heart, not the brain. So when someone died, they believed the heart was weighed to determine a person's fate after death. So they basically, the more you had in your heart, the heavier your heart was, the better person, I guess, they believed that you were. And that's why they talk about having a heavy heart. That means you're a pretty caring person. Or speaking from your heart. That's that quote of basically thinking that your information, your personality, your emotions all come from your heart. We know that's not necessarily true, but that's a theory that they had in the past. I'm going to say a heavy heart. So these are some of the phrases that have come out of that, that we still use today, but we don't believe what the Egyptians did. In the 2nd century Greece, physicians like Galen believed that the heart had 2 chambers and that food was turned into blood by the liver and then used up in the body. So they believed that food was made blood, I guess. They also believed that the heart sucked blood from the veins and used it up. These ideas lasted for about 1,500 years until it became more acceptable to perform human dissections. So these people basically believed this because they didn't really dissect people. It was sort of frowned upon religiously. So in order to figure some of this stuff out, they had to cut open humans, dead people, cadavers, to be able to figure out some things about them. And before this time, they didn't. They thought it was disrespectful, and some people may still think it is. But they needed that human dissections to be able to prove some of their theories to be wrong. Da Vinci was one of the first to dissect a human cadaver and made many discoveries. I don't know if cadaver means like a dead person. That's what the word we use for it. But he had to keep them secret because experiments on humans were not allowed. To keep his work secret, he used a type of mirror image writing. So he wrote things backwards so that people couldn't figure out, I guess, what he was writing. It says it takes a different, quieter part of the brain to write in mirror. So yeah, This was a way of him to keep his notes private, although I don't know if it was totally that hard to distinguish what he was trying to say. Some more recent ideas about the heart. William Harvey discovered valves existed in both the heart and veins to control blood flow. The heart repumps the same blood over and over again, and the cardiac output is the volume of blood pumped by the heart in 1 minute, which is equal to the product of stroke volume and heart rate. We're going to explain what cardiac output is right here. So when we're looking at our heart, to figure out our cardiac output, which is basically our measured in volume, and volume in this case is in liters of blood pumped through the heart in 1 minute. So if we're looking for our cardiac output, the faster our heart is beating, the more blood should be pumping out. An adult male typically pumps about 70 milliliters of blood per beat, which is his stroke volume, and the average resting heart rate is 72. So to calculate that, if we look at this formula at the bottom, our cardiac output is equal to our stroke volume, which if you're an adult male, it's around 70 times your heart rate. An adult female pumps about 60 milliliters of blood per beat, and the average resting heart rate is about 72 beats per minute. Okay, so that is the formula that we use, and I think there's going to be an example here that we should try. Okay, so it says a typical human male has a stroke volume of 70 mils per beat and a resting heart rate of 72 beats per minute. Calculate the cardiac output and express your answer in liters per minute. All right, so it's giving us the steps here that we've got to do. Our first step, I guess, is that we've got to convert our milliliters into liters, because cardiac output is always measured in liters. They've given us milliliters. So if you don't know how to calculate milliliters into liters, I'm going to tell you right now, just take your milliliter amount and divide by 1,000. Okay? That's a foolproof way. You'll always get the right answer. Another way that you can do it is you can move your decimal 3 places to the left, and that's my preferred method, but many people feel like dividing by 1,000, you're never going to get a wrong number, basically. Okay, so, So if we calculate that by doing it in our calculator divided by 1,000, we would get 0.07, and that is liters per beat. Okay? So it's important that we put it into liters so that we can plug it into our equation. So on this next slide, it did it for us. So they did it. They did 70 mils divided by 1,000 and calculated it to get 0.070 liters per beat, which is what we just did. So now that we've got that, we can calculate our cardiac output. So let's do this. So our cardiac output is what we're trying to figure out. We can plug in our pieces of information that we need. I'm just going to call it CO, cardiac output, is equal to our stroke volume. And if we look at our stroke volume, it's this. But remember, we figured it out to be 0.070 liters. So I'm going to write that in there because we want it to be in liters. Multiplied by our heart rate. And our heart rate in this case is 72 beats per minute. All right, and if we calculate that out, we will find out what our cardiac output is. So I'm just going to do that on my calculator, and you can do it on any calculator. It's just multiplying numbers. So I get an answer of 5.04. And cardiac output, remember, is, just to double check what it says up here. Our cardiac output is our volume in liters of blood pumped through our heart in 1 minute. So when we do our answer, this cardiac output, I got 5.04. That should be liters per minute. Okay. And sometimes your question might want you to round it to a whole number. So if we're doing that, then our answer would be 5 liters in a minute. So what that's saying is, in an adult male, if you're at rest, you're putting 5 liters of blood through your heart every minute. That heart is working pretty hard. So they're showing you how to do it here. They do it out. They get 5.04. They want it to be rounded to 2 significant digits, so they put 5.0. All right. So now there's some practice problems that probably entail using that. So you can do that now or after. I'm going to continue on to the next part. It says the heart is an amazing pump. The size of your closed hand is about the size of your heart. Your heart beats about 800,000 times per day and about 2.5 billion times in a lifetime. The heart is located almost in the center of the chest, not to the left side. So almost in the center, but if there's any way, it normally does go a little tiny bit on the left if it's not centered. Doctors listen to your heart on the left side of your chest because your heart is tilted slightly left. Okay, so slightly tilted to the left. Using your page 11 to help you label the parts located in the word box, take note of where the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood come from, and go. So they want you to use, I don't know, does it go through all of these parts? Yeah, it does. So they want you to do this on your own, but we can just continue. It'll show us how to do it. And also I'll explain each of these parts. So the first part right here where it's pointing, they've labeled it the aorta, and the aorta is definitely a part of the body where you have oxygenated blood. No. We normally put oxygenated blood in red. Okay, so this blood has oxygen in it, and it's gonna be moving to your body. Okay, so that is what the aorta is. The aorta is actually the last part of the heart where you're going to see the blood be pumped out to the rest of your body. So one of those will go to the head, one might go to the left side, one might go to the right side. It's pumping it out of your heart onto the body to give your body that oxygen. Okay. The next part that they've got labeled here is the superior vena cava. That is a deoxygenated blood source. This is where the blood will come back into the heart from the body. And so it'll come from this direction and from the bottom up. And all of that deoxygenated blood is coming back to the heart so that it can be pumped to the lungs. And then from the lungs, it'll be pumped to the rest of the body. Okay? Well, lungs back to the heart and then out to the rest of the body. Now they've got a whole bunch on here. So our superior vena cava, you should just follow the blood through the heart. So how we've got it here, the blood comes in on the bottom and top, through there, and it all pools in this area, okay? That part is known as the, it's like all the way to there, I guess. That section is known as the right atrium. If you notice, it looks like it's on the left, but if you put this heart like it's inside of your body, then it is technically on the right. So it's like we're looking at it, if it was in someone's body, then it's on their right, okay? Their perspective. So that's the right atrium. That's where all of the deoxygenated blood, once it comes in the superior and inferior vena cava, it pools up into the right atrium. There's a valve right here. This is what, actually, yeah. This section of the heart is like a valve, and that will open up as blood can pump through there, and it goes into the right ventricle. Then the right ventricle, there's another valve here. This picture doesn't show it. Pumps up and out of the pulmonary vein. Sorry, pulmonary artery. I'm just thinking about this, how I've been going through this a bit too fast. So in the heart, into the right atrium, down to the right ventricle, and then up through the pulmonary artery. Okay? This pulmonary, anything that has the word pulmonary, means it's coming from the lungs or to the lungs. Just going to write pulmonary artery because that's going to go to the lungs to get oxygen in it. When it comes back to the heart, it's going to be coming back to the heart through here, which is known as the pulmonary vein. I'm just going to write pulmon vein. So it's pulmonary, but I don't have enough room there. Pulmonary vein, so it comes back through that vein and into the left ventricle, atrium. The atrium is always where the blood will gather once it comes into the heart. It gets pumped through this into here, which is known as the left ventricle. And then the left ventricle will pump the blood out. It would be going behind this valve and up through here, and then out the aorta. Okay? So it's a little bit confusing, but really knowing this picture, once you know how to label the heart, it's actually not too bad. If you guys did take Bio 20, some of you did. We already did this in Bio 20. So it's a review for you. So hopefully you'll be really good at it. So in this picture, yeah, they've got the pulmonary vein and the pulmonary artery. Notice there's a pulmonary vein and artery on both sides. And I think that's labeled wrong. No, it's not. So this would be the artery, which is not red. This would be the pulmonary artery on that side. This is the pulmonary artery on the other side. And then this would be the vein. All right. So all of those pieces I've already gone over except for the bottom here, which tells us it's a septum. This part of the heart, the middle part that separates one side from the other, is known as a septum. And it's basically, you have some other septums in your body, such as in your nose, that separates the two sides of your nose from each other. Okay? Septum, some quick vocabulary. It's the thick wall of muscle that divides the left and right sides of the heart. The atriums are the smaller upper chambers that receive blood returning to the heart. The ventricle is the larger V-shaped bottom chamber that pumps the blood from the heart. And then the valves are thin flaps of tissue in the heart that open and close to ensure the proper direction of blood flow. So we've got a bunch of pictures of it here. I think that they want me to draw the blood flow, and I will definitely do that for you. I'm going to use this pencil. Actually, this one. So let's follow blood, the deoxygenated blood. So the blood that's coming back to our heart to go get oxygen from the lungs and get rid of that carbon dioxide. So it's going to come in here, it's going to flow through and in here and then up and that way. Okay, so that's how the deoxygenated blood is going to flow. do it on the other picture. And then this is where the blood is going to come back to the heart, is through here, down here, up, and out of the heart. Okay? So those are the two sides. If I want to, you want those all in one diagram. And then out. Okay? So those two sides are totally disconnected because this septum is splitting it into. Okay, so all of the oxygenated blood, which is the red, is separated from the deoxygenated blood. And that's something that only happens in mammals. This is a mammalian heart. So I'm going to write oxygen rich. And then the blue stuff would be oxygen poor. Right? So this happens in a mammalian heart. This is a mammal's heart. If we look at like a lizard, reptile, amphibian heart, they don't have a proper septum, so the blood actually mixes together. And that's what causes them to be not as efficient at keeping themselves basically warm. So that's the difference between cold-blooded and warm-blooded. They're just not as efficient at keeping their oxygen-rich blood away from their carbon dioxide blood, so we get a mixture, and it just can't keep that cardiac output up as fast as mammals can. Okay. I guess I was supposed to do a whole bunch of talking about that. But anyway, so it says the name the major artery or vein that best matches each description. So this is really far away. I'm just going to name all the arteries and veins in here. So I'll do the arteries in red. So aorta is considered an artery. This blue one, it's the only artery that would be carrying oxygen poor blood. This is called the pulmonary artery. And this one is the pulmonary vein. And then we have the same thing on the other side of the heart. So if we zoom in over here, this is considered the pulmonary vein. And then this would be the pulmonary artery. This one coming into the heart is the superior vena cava, and that would be considered a vein. And the same with the bottom here, the inferior. Is also a vein. Something to remember about veins and arteries. This is like the easiest way to remember. Arteries are away. So think A for away. So arteries are always away from the heart. Veins are towards heart. So whenever a blood vessel is bringing something away from the heart, it's an artery. Whenever it's bringing it towards the heart, it's a vein. All right, so those are some tips on things to remember there. So let's try these questions. So carries oxygen poor blood to the lungs. So if we go back to our diagram, the one that's bringing blood to our lungs, the word lungs, these pulmonary are the ones that have to do with the lungs. And the one that's bringing oxygen poor blood, so that's blue in the diagram, would be this one. So that would be our pulmonary artery. So if we go down to here, that's what we would want to write in this blank. The body's largest artery, so if we go back and look at our heart, what's the largest artery there? The biggest looking one. That's our aorta, because look how big it is. So if we go back down here, we want to write aorta. That's the biggest artery because it's pumping all that blood away from the heart and to our whole body. It's got a really important job. So if something happens to your aorta, you're not gonna probably make it, or you're gonna have emergency surgery, because that aorta's, think about, there's 5 liters of blood going through there every minute. Really important that that aorta is working properly. A blood vessel that carries oxygen-rich blood to the heart from the lungs. So if we look back to our diagram back here, I'm going to go back to my diagram that has the arrows. So the ones that are coming back from the lungs, think of our lungs as being on the side. That would be this one right here. Because it's going back to the heart, it's not away from the heart, so it would be a vein. It's coming back from the lungs, so that should be a pulmonary vein. So pulmonary vein. And then carries oxygen poor blood to the heart from the body's tissues. That is those big veins coming into the bottom of the heart. See the ones coming right here and right here. So what does it say again? Carries oxygen poor blood to the heart from the body's tissues. That is both the superior and inferior. So both of them, superior and inferior. Vena cava. And I think that the inferior in particular is the one we would be bringing from your body's tissues. The superior is going to be coming from the head. So I don't know if in this question they want just specifically the body tissues. Because it's coming from the bottom, it's coming from the rest of the body. That's the inferior vena cava. Right? How the heart beats. It says this looks like a step-by-step process. In reality, the left and right contract and relax together. When the right atrium relaxes, so does the left. So they both fill with blood. When both arteria or atriums contract, both AV valves open, filling both ventricles together. So you should hear, when you listen to a heartbeat, it should be a dud 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 dud. And if they hear something that's different than that, like da 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 or something like that, that's possibly a sign that you have something going wrong. Maybe your valves aren't closing properly. I'm just going to show you. Actually, I can't, because then it won't let me put this on YouTube. I can't show you a YouTube video inside of my YouTube video, or I will get banned. But I will post a video of the beating heart, okay, to show you how this works. So there's 2 parts of a heartbeat. One is the diastole and one is the systole. The diastole is your relaxation part of the cycle. The valves are open and relaxed heart chambers fill with blood. So that's like your filling up process. The systole is the contraction part of the cycle. This is when your atrium and ventricles contract and push blood out of your heart. Okay, so this is the contraction part of the cycle. The lub-dub noise of your heart is from the closing of the valves during contractions. Okay, so the dud, 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 dud. They call it lub-dub, lub-dub. That is the opening and closing of valves. So if we look at this picture, the lub noise is the AV valves closing. So these are the AV valves, the valves that are in between the atrium and ventricle. So right here. Yeah. So that's that lub noise. That's when between your atrium and ventricle, then the valves close, they snap shut. And then the dub noise is the closing of these valves. So these are the valves that are pushing blood out of your heart. So they're both doing it at the same time, so it should be a constant. You shouldn't hear one closing before the other. And that's something that a doctor can hear pretty fast when they listen to your heart. If they notice any sort of like maybe mumbly noise or something not quite lining up, that's when they can do some more tests on your heart. Some factors that would affect your heart rate. So the faster you hear the dud, 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 the faster your heart is beating. Some things that might affect that would be your emotions. So fear, excitement increases your heart rate. Outside temperatures, so excess heat increases your heart rate. So in an attempt to increase blood flow, to dissipate your heat. So the warmer you are, the more likely your heart rate is going to be up. Your cardio exercise, so the more you're moving, your stroke volume, so the more blood that's going through your heart, the faster your heart rate is going to be. Your heart muscle will become more elastic, but not larger. So when people say doing cardio exercise is good for you, it's good because it makes your heart more elastic. So your heart is able to stretch better, and that can make you, I guess, in better shape cardiovascularly, if that's a word. The more athletic a person is, the lower their resting heart rate is. So if you were to test your resting heart rate, my watch does it for me every day. And at the end of the day, I normally look at my average resting heart rate over the day, and it can be, I don't know, yesterday mine was pretty low. I think it's because I was sitting at a table for a very long time in the day. It was in the high 50s. But in a normal day, my average is normally in the high 60s, low 70s. And that is a typical resting heart rate. There's people that are like super athletes, yoga fanatics that can have their resting heart rate in like the 30s, low 40s, which is pretty low. Your body's really good at using the oxygen and effectively. Here's some heart videos. I can't post them here, but I will post them on the Google Classroom. And here's a summary. So it says, beliefs about the heart and the circulatory system have changed over time. William Harvey was the first person to prove that blood circulated around the body in a closed system of vessels. The pump that drives the circulatory system is the heart. The output of blood from the heart depends on how many times the heart contracts and how much blood it moved with each contraction. The arteria contracts simultaneously, followed by the simultaneous contraction of the two ventricles. This two-part contraction creates that lub-dub sound due to the functioning of the heart's valves. The heart rate is affected by emotion, temperature, exercise, fitness level, sleep, hormones, chemicals, drugs, and alcohol. And by monitoring the heart rate during exercise programs, appropriate levels of exertion can be ensured. You may have done this in phys ed class where you figured your heart rate that you wanted your heart rate like at 80% or whatever, what you wanted to exert to get yourself in a certain range. And your heart rate is a key indicator of cardiovascular fitness. Okay, so that is that first section. There's a couple practice problems here, page 19, 1 to 6, and I will post the textbook on there for you. That's what I would expect you to do. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about any of this, and we'll continue on this tomorrow.